Okay, so this is one of those moments where something old comes back around, and then suddenly everybody has an opinion on it. And not just any kind of opinion, like a strong opinion. And I'm sure you've seen it, but it's the food pyramid. And it's the thing we learned in school. And like as adults, I guess we mostly ignore it. And eventually it was kind of either assumed it was like outdated or useless or, I mean, even actively harmful. But now it's back. Or, I mean, at least the idea of it is, and it's being flipped and reshaped and re-emphasized and debated again before, look, anybody checks out. This isn't a political episode, and it's definitely not like a diet episode. It's definitely not a here's what you should eat type episode. This is still an ADHD episode because when nutrition guidance changes at like a population level, it it doesn't just change food. It changes what people believe is totally normal. And for people with ADHD, what's considered normal, it really matters more than a lot of people even realize. But here's the real question I care about. Not like, is this new food pyramid perfect, but is it in the right direction for how real human nervous systems actually work? And, especially for ADHD nervous systems, because most people with ADHD, they're not failing at health because, like we don't care. Most times it's failing because their systems are so totally overloaded. All right, let's rewind for a second. Most of us grew up with a food pyramid. I know most of you guys remember what it looks like. Um, and it was, carbohydrates and grains at the base of it. That was like the brunt of it for energy. And then fat was treated like the enemy, and protein was kind of somewhere in the middle, and sugar was technically at the top. And while being in everything, and it's important to say this out loud. Okay, let's say this out loud. Like that pyramid wasn't created by idiots, no matter what anybody thinks. It wasn't created by villains. And it was actually created in a specific context. Heart disease was terrifying and fat was easy to blame at the time. Carbs were cheap and super available. And we needed simple rules that could apply to like millions of people. So the food pyramid it wasn't supposed to be used as a medical plan. It's a communication tool. It was never meant to be like perfect. It was meant to be simple so people could read it. The problem really wasn't the intent. The problem was pretending that like all calories behave the same once they get inside the body, and they don't. And this is where a lot of nutrition advice, it really gets messy because science doesn't flip. It really refines. And over the last few decades, we've learned some really inconvenient things like ultra processed foods behave very differently than whole foods do with the body. And blood sugar stability matters more than like calorie math. And macronutrients affect hormone levels and mood and cognition differently. And one size fits all guidance really breaks down in real life. And so the food pyramid, or like my plate, or whatever visual we were using, it starts to shift. And it doesn't mean everything was wrong. It means the center of gravity is moving. And I want everybody to keep in mind that direction really matters. What's actually changing right now, it's not specifics, not like portion sizes, not grams. Keep in mind, the emphasis is changing. It's the emphasis. Protein is being prioritized more. This is great. Ultra processed foods and added sugars are being deprioritized, and that's amazing. And whole foods are really being emphasized over refined foods. That's really good. And it's really important. And that's not saying like eat unlimited red meat. It's not saying like carbs are bad. It's also not saying, like fat fixes everything like maybe a lot of carnivore people think. What it is saying is that we probably undervalued protein and we over relied on refined carbohydrates. And that's the signal. And for ADHD brains, that signal is actually like a really big deal. It's what really puts things together for us. So let's talk about protein for a minute, and not like a gym bro way. Like protein isn't not just muscle food, like protein is foundational for us. It provides amino acids, the building blocks like neurotransmitters, and even like building skin and organs and all those things. It also slows digestion, which ultimately stabilizes blood sugar. That's going to help out with mood, in reactive eating. So it supports immune and hormonal systems all throughout the body. Protein changes how stable your total internal environment, your total internal environment is. And stability is like wildly underrated because when your internal environment is all chaotic and fucked up, your decisions become chaotic and fucked up too. So if we layer ADHD on top of that, because ADHD is not just attention, it's nervous system sensitivity too. And ADHD brains tend to struggle with like dopamine regulation and blood sugar swings, impulsivity, emotional reactivity, executive function access is, under stress is very low. Here are all the things that get misunderstood about this. Like protein does not fix ADHD. That's not what this is going to do. Protein doesn't like give you motivation from the dopamine. It's not going to lower the noise. It reduces the background chaos like just enough for the brain you like already have to actually do its job. Because when blood sugar is steady, decisions they feel a lot less urgent. And when urgency drops, impulsivity drops. And when impulsivity drops, shame drops. That's it's like the chain reaction. And a lot of bad ADHD decisions are made, they're just fast decisions made under pressure. That's typically what happens there. But let's talk about dopamine for a second. All right. So because food and dopamine are so deeply connected and ultra processed foods and sugar are not just evil, they're fast. It's fast dopamine. It's fast energy. It's fast relief from stress, but it's also fast crashes. And ADHD brains are already unbelievably fast. We don't need the speed. We don't need to be faster. We need to be steadier. And protein is a whole food source that makes us steadier and slows us down just enough to make the right choice to exist in this world. And like that's the key word is it gives us choice. And this is where the nervous system piece matters. When your nervous system is overloaded, emotional regulation drops. You don't have access to that portion of your brain. And impulse control gets really weak, planning collapses, stress feels way louder, and ultra processed foods just add so much volatility to that. So protein in whole foods, they actually add predictability, and predictability is calming. It takes the stress away. This is why nutrition for ADHD it's not just like about discipline. It's about lowering the cost of existing. Let's do a quick reality check before anybody like panics about everything all this like information that I'm giving. Carbohydrates aren't bad. Fats aren't bad. Plants matter. Fiber matters. Don't think of this as like restriction. It's not like purity. It's not like control. This is actually predictability. And ADHD brains thrive when tomorrow feels similar enough to today that the nervous system doesn't stay in that fight or flight mode. Health isn't so much about control as it is about predictability. And yes, there are fair critiques about this thing, like portion size, it matters. Protein sources, they matter. Environmental concerns are real. Individual needs vary. And no food pyramid is going to fix any kind of trauma or ADHD. No guideline fixes are going to also fix your sleep deprivation. If a shift in guidance helps people from not digging a metabolic hole, that's not nothing, right? It's better. That's a better default to help people before they need the willpower. So here's my grounded take. This pyramid is not the final answer, but for ADHD brains like mine and yours, and honestly, most people, prioritizing protein and whole foods is a very meaningful improvement over where we've been. And not because it makes you look better, but because it helps you show up better. It helps your brain work better. It's not just about the muscles, you know what I mean? And if you're a parent with ADHD, that matters even more. Healthy isn't just vanity for ADHD as a parent. Health is your infrastructure. This isn't about eating perfectly. It's about building a body that gives your brain an actual fighting chance. So at the end of the day, keep in mind that the new food pyramid isn't made to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be perfect. This is an outline. Like I said at the beginning, this is the communication. And at bare minimum, it is a great first draft. It is a great first step to improving nutritional guidelines for ADHD brains, especially. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you also that's the one, right? Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, guys, so that when I do my next video, you know when it's coming. It helps out extremely, extremely, extremely. It helps out a lot. Okay, guys. So make sure you do that. Other than that, have an amazing day.